All right. Uh, okay. Hello, Saga. Nice to see you. Wednesday, August 6th. We're, I guess, 3 days removed from the end of the CrossFit Games, 2 days removed from Patrick traveling back from the CrossFit Games. And that's the nature of the show today, is that PC spent the week up in Albany. And I think you were very present there. You weren't putting out too much stuff on social media. Some pictures for B.Friendly Fitness, some stuff about your athletes, which we'll talk about. But you and I were talking over the last couple of days, and we thought it would be fun to have a show where we could just get a chance to get your perspective on the experience, kind of all aspects of it, from athletes on both individual and team competitions to the general feel of the environment and everything in between. Yeah, you seem to be up for it. And I'm looking forward to hearing kind of what you have to say. I mean, we've spoken a little bit, but there's plenty of stuff that I think you were able to take in. It's for people who may not know. How many times have you been at the CrossFit Games now in one capacity or another?
Since 2017, not counting 2020 and 24. So what's that's 8 games? So 6 games?
Yeah.
17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24. So that's 7. No, 7. I can't count.
And I sat this one out to let you get a little bit closer to me.
I don't think I can. Yeah, you'll pull ahead.
But yeah, and I would say, or maybe you even said this to me, that the capacity in which you were at the games this year was definitely different, maybe overall a little bit less responsibility or stress in terms of executing on different jobs and roles than in the years past. And one of the main reasons that you went is because you had 2 athletes that were competing there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had one Syria Meha, and then individual, and then Ava George on the team. So both 2 rookies, and I mean, we're all rookies because it was at a new location. So it's like, there's so many things, and we'll talk about like just the logistics of it. It was really nice, like Madison, just knowing, because my previous years there in different capacity, I knew how to navigate it. And I think for me and a bunch of other people, including managers, it was difficult to navigate because we weren't fully, used to it or didn't know where locations were and stuff like that. But yeah, it was really cool.
And I mean, I wanted to start by just asking about the experience managing, 2 female athletes, first year at the games, one of them on a team, one of us as an individual, traveled over from Europe, and first experience there. I'm sure you got to meet some of her family and team as well, but I thought it'd be nice to start with how it was for you with Syria and Ava.
2 very different things. I mean, if you know Ava, she's very, even though she's 22, she's very like low maintenance. She doesn't need much help. If she needs help, she'll ask. But her being on the proven team and having proven kind of providing everything, and then her teammates there, it's a lot easier with the team. I mean, I've managed quite a few team athletes, from Devin Kim to Kyra to just numerous team athletes, and I found like with teams, especially like when you talk about Invictus and Mayhem, like those 2 women were a part of, they have so much support. So it's more of like, I think the main thing I did with them was like, through our friends at Asian Flavor Punch, I was able to get them meals for the whole weekend, the athlete meals. So it's just the role of a manager during the weekend is what I do is what I tell athletes, like my role during the games weekend is to make it so that way all you have to worry about is the competition. You don't have to sit there and worry about ordering food, where you get this, that from, kind of like what I do for the Army is logistics. So that's what I want to do for the athletes, to provide them some logistical help and make things easier on them. So in the case for Ava, I got Asian Flavor Punch.
Mike, sadly, Mike, they don't make sushi there, so I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, I can only imagine Mike doing the commercials for those in his Asian voice that he's now notorious for. But yeah, it was just something as simple as that, because Asian, I mean, they provide an amazing breakfast. if you ever had those. Yeah. So I knew that's why I like Julia. And it wasn't because of you, Mike. Um, so it was really cool. It was really cool to kind of help out with Syria. It's a little bit different because athletes, especially those coming overseas, especially rookies, it's kind of like it's a new thing for her. In Syria, she is one of the most like, I mean, obviously she's extremely smart, in many minds. She has aspirations to be an astronaut, and she has an engineering degree and she has the experience and life experience.
Speaks several languages.
Speaks several like Italian, Albanian, English, I believe Greek maybe.
She might speak Greek. I
And
mean, it felt like she could speak Turkish and Spanish. Like everywhere I've gone and covered her, I'm like,
yeah,
this woman's
yeah.
incredible.
But she's she's just an incredible being. Those that watched that Hiller video, that was just like, and Hiller even said to him, that's only like that's just like that's only one layer peeling that onion with her. And I still don't know that much. I mean, it was great because when we're leaving the Albany airport, me and her and her father, we got there around noon for our 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock flights. So we just sat there at the Starbucks and just talked. And it was like really the first time, because during competition, that's not really the time to get to really know your athlete. And she kind of brought me on like, 2 weeks before the games to help her out. And, it was different, like just kind of telling her how things typically run, and she's kind of like hands off. She's very independent. But whenever she needed something, she knew to message me and I, provide it. And, everything from, there was kind of an issue with uniforms, especially for women from Valetes who, they're very good looking uniforms, but, the sizes were off on a lot of athletes. And, I think that maybe they underestimated like the volume and the need to be able to, provide things for athletes, on the spot. It's not as simple as just like, here's my size. Certain size, certain things fit differently. And I think they were kind of ill prepared for that, especially not having like a heat press on site to provide some of those things that they need, like putting the athlete numbers and stuff like that. But if they're back next year or any other future big venue event, they'll learn from this mistake, and not mistake, but they'll learn from that and get better. But yeah, Syria is just a little bit different. Obviously, she has some peaks and valleys. If you watch the Hiller video, she was dealing with some injuries coming in. She went from not having a coach all season to having a coach at the games, and that was a whole new thing. If you saw her post today, it's like going back to her training that she's used to, that she hasn't had for 2 months. My advice to her, and she realized it too, is like she shouldn't have changed what got her there, and that drastic change caused her.
Except for bringing you as manager, that was a good change.
Yeah. I mean, it was, she needed a physio. I was able to get her a physio. Shout out to Brian and Hattie Canio and Tristan Patrick. They were very helpful. I mean, she had a previous relationship with Hattie from Elfit from like 3 years ago. So they kind of knew each other from there. And so, and Tristan was really good when Syria ended up giving her coach's pass to her father. Managers didn't have the access that they typically had in the past. So I reached out to Tristan. I'm like, hey, Tristan, can you help her father? Her father, he speaks he understands and speaks English very well, but he just doesn't know the lay of the land. And, he's like, so Tristan was, shout out to Tristan for like kind of helping him along, showing him where he needed to be. So,
well, I will say, because I saw Lynn's comment here, one of the things that has been a mainstay in all of the competitions and conversations that I've had with her is that like her dad is her number. Like he's always traveling to the competitions frequently when he can, supporting her in any way and from afar if he can't be there. So that was cool that there was some exposure around that relationship for them as well.
I don't know who she's calling a loser, but
it's me. It's always me. He's probably Brian, I didn't know I would take so much heat for being on your channel just because of you.
That's the easiest way to not get a birthday present there, Caitlin. So yeah, Brian still gets a birthday present, but not Caitlin. But yeah, that's kind of like a quick rundown of like that, like you said about her father. What a great dude, man. He's just like the amount of like, if you saw her post, there's a couple pictures of her and her dad, and I was, that's kind of one of the things I also provide as a manager is like, with my media skills and you know, you know, as much media as there is at the games, Syria is not gonna have that many images, and Ava, especially in a team division, is not gonna have that stuff, and that's something I want to provide them. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, that's why I got into photography, sports photography to begin with. Is like I played Division I football, and I have no pictures of me from my playing career. And not that it's like an ego thing, but it's just like cool to have, and it's like especially now
Oh, it's memories,
it's memories, exactly. And that's what I do. I capture memories, and I don't have that. I mean, I have them in my head, and I have certain things, but it's just like, like a lot of the athletes that I've taken pictures of, I've developed friendships with, and it's like, I've been to their weddings and stuff like that, and I've been invited to their houses, and it's like I go down to like one of my good friends, he was a baseball player and his wife was a softball player at Southeast Missouri State, and down in their basement they have two blown up pictures of when they played their playing careers at Southeast Missouri State, and they're blown up, and it's down in their basement. And I took those, and it's just like it's great. It's just crazy, like and that's what I wanted to provide for Ava, like her first games and her team as well. I mean, they're all games rookies, and the same with Syria. And then to capture those moments between her and her dad, that was really cool, and that's just kind of what I wanted to do for them, and yeah, and just like, but it was a different beast as a manager this year. Yeah, it was a different beast for managers because in past years we either had we had access to our athletes in some capacity, and this year the only access we got were where we got tickets, which was really great. They gave us a great seat right there at the finish line. But a lot of what we do is between the events, running back there, whether like getting grips or getting them the meals or carrying their bags and just trying to make it so that way they don't have to worry about anything. And
Well, I wanted to ask you a little about that in general, because I
yeah.
mean, as you said, you didn't go last year, but it was just like a one-off kind of year. But you had a lot of experience at Madison, and obviously it evolves as it goes. But you've been in different roles. You talk to a lot of people that are in different roles, whether it's coaches, managers, internal media, external media, fans, whatever. So if you take like the athletes and coaches out of it that obviously have to have that access, I was kind of curious what the overall experience at the new venue was like in terms of flow and accessibility for those different groups of people.
Well, it varies. What I heard from the athlete side was the flow, like they had the separate building. One, the MVP arena itself, great venue. It's unfortunate. It's obviously a bigger venue than what we had at Madison. So when you look at it, I mean, for every event, I tried to find a different vantage point to sit, to soak it in, and just a different vantage point. And I think I sent you a bunch of like some of the examples of where it was, but because it's so big and it's harder to fill up. So there is a lot of criticism that there weren't a lot of people there. No, it was maybe I think on Saturday night when it was the fullest, it was maybe just over half full. Now, granted, some of the seats were blocked off, like carpeted off. So I kind of you have to take that into account, like the upper bowl. But there wasn't a bad seat to watch the event, even behind the rig, which seemed very sparsely populated. But they, where they had the media was at I guess the starting line, not the finish line. It was kind of, I don't think any of the media actually sat in those media seats. But getting around inside was rather simple. A lot of food options. The bathrooms were downstairs. The sound was really good. Yeah, the lighting was great, I think, from a media standpoint. But however, it's when you went to Vendor Village, it became an issue. Because where Vendor Village was this place called the ACC, I think the Albany Convention Center. By the way, it's Albany, not Albany. Um, it's so you say it like with two L's, not with like Al. But there's a skywalk that took you to the convention center, the ACC, and the ACC is where you had the athlete warm up area, the athlete, you know, the athlete area. That's where the vendor village was upstairs. Very, very small vendor village area. I think maybe they might have had 15 vendors up there. But the ability to get there was so difficult because it was open to everyone. And they have a New York state law where everyone has to go through a metal detector, no bags, stuff like that. So they only had like 3 metal detectors set up. So you just had lines. And if you're an athlete that wanted to leave the ACC, you had to fight through the vendors or the fans to get out. Was one of the options. I think there was a back door, but most of them just went through the front door. And then the way they had the athletes displayed, the athlete warm-up area was right underneath the escalator that took you to the vendors. So there wasn't like a secluded athlete area. It was just open. So you had a lot of fans that were sitting there. It's like, I think Taylor mentioned something like they were just like, it was almost like a zoo where people were screaming at like, Colton, come over here, sign this autograph, stuff like that. And because the tight schedule between events, most of the athletes end up staying there at the venue. And
I felt like overall the competition days ended earlier than usual. Obviously, there was less things going on overall, less heat overall.
It was great, and I think the programming was the reason why. Because, like I said, we didn't have any really long, outside of that change he made to the handstand walk with increasing the run. We didn't really have any long workouts if you count the last one as well, which is like one of the longer, if you don't count Atalanta, one of the longest running time domain for a final. But yeah, that was difficult because, like I said, if you wanted to go back, if you're at the vendor area and you wanted to go back to the MVP arena, even though there was a sky bridge that connected it, you had to go all the way around the front, get scanned back in, and go back inside and get your scan. And that was for everybody. Even athletes had that, I believe, as well. So and media as well. And the media room was actually located in that ACC as well. So it's not. I wasn't there at Fort Worth, but it seemed like Fort Worth, everything was contained in one spot, which was great. In Madison, it was kind of separate, media room plus that stuff. But but Madison was a different beast because it was so wide. It had North Park. It was so spread out. You were used to it. It had that festival. When you're doing just an arena thing, it's best if everything was enclosed in one space. But I understand what they did, and I think that CrossFit. They'll learn from this, hopefully. I mean, Trish says it was amazing. If you want to pull that up.
Yeah, I got a few comments started that I wanted to hit on, but we can start with Trish. Nice to see you, Trish, there, always with a lovely smile.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not being critical. I'm by all means, CrossFit, they did the best of what they had, and that's what they had. I don't know, like even using my brain and logistics and being at so many competitions, how I would change some of those things. I think the only thing I would have done differently is like allowing multiple points of access to get into the MVP arena instead of walking away to the front to check in to get back in from Vendor Village. It just made things a little bit difficult and maybe streamlined the traffic, but I don't know how you would streamline that. But plenty of parking, plenty of hotel options, even shitty hotels like myself.
Well, and those some of those little details that you're talking about, I remember being at the 2017 games, which was the first year in Madison as a fan, and having an opportunity kind of randomly and sporadically to talk to Justin Berg, who was more or less in charge of the logistics side of setting up the games at that point. And it was towards the end of the week. I think it was Sunday morning. And he asked my dad and I, who were there watching, how our experience was on site. And he was very interested in some of the small, I would say like the small inconveniences of, likely just being at a new venue for the first time. And, I've heard a lot of different things and seen some different things about whether they like this venue or not. And who knows if they'll go back there. But I think that it's almost inevitable. We see it all the time at competitions that we work at, of big to small, that when they go to a new venue, there's always little hiccups in terms of learning curves. No matter how many times you've done an event before, doing it in a new place is always challenging. So I don't think that any of that is necessarily surprising. And like you said, about Velitas, like anytime you're doing something for the first time, you got to have a little grace for the group that's doing it, and then let's see how they learn and adapt from that going forward.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, you're gonna always find something. And like to say, the way I look at things from a logistical side, um, you know, from that aspect, I think CrossFit did an excellent job of handling what they were given. I mean, when you went out to the main thing, I mean, they had their out front is where they had their the main high paying vendors. Like those were like vendor partners. So you had Proven booth there, you had Mayhem, you had Asian Flavor Punch, which was awesome because you could bring, because they blocked off the street, and you could bring that into the arena because that was considered self-contained. So you could bring outside food in.
Right.
So that was great because I was getting my food and walking in and eat my teriyaki chicken.
That makes me really happy for Ted also, because
Yeah, no, it was great.
man, he's had some rough goes at some stops along the way. So it's great to hear that.
Yeah, and every time I'm so glad that I'd ordered food beforehand because, like I said, I ordered it for Proven, but I also, Ted was like, "Well, do you want anything?" I'm like, "I didn't even think about myself, but thanks, Ted." But yeah, there was some meals in there for me, so I had my own meals, and I didn't. But every time there was a break in the action, I would try to run out there, and it was a long ass line.
Run out to where?
Huh?
Run out where?
Asian Flavor Punch.
We're gonna get Sugan drunk on this show.
I know.
Is
Well,
it?
I mean, if you ever been to a CrossFit event, it's like that's the best food. It's like it really is. But strong coffee was out there. Then you go inside the venue. It had kind of like an open area. They had the two main stores. But to get up to the upper level, to get to the floor to your seats, you had to go either past Valete's or you had to go past like the Rogue store or the Two Poot store or the Yeti store. To go past them. And every time I went up the escalator, Valete's it was there, and it's like it was packed with people buying merch and stuff like that. Same with Two Poot and same with Yeti. And of course, when I went to Rogue the last day because I wanted to get a hoodie. Imagine that, me wanting to get a hoodie, a Rogue hoodie. That last day is when they started putting all the plates for sale, the games plates, and man, it was crazy. How many people flock to that.
Well, I like hearing that in general because something that we've talked about many times over, and especially with Roger and some of the guys in Europe, is that there's all these different aspects of key parts of the event that you're running, and the sponsors are certainly a part of that. And so it sounds like the vendor village situation was maybe a learning curve thing, maybe just a challenge for space, but for the people that paid to really support at the highest level, that they had a pretty premium spot.
Yeah, like I said, those paid partners. I mean, I think they really got their money's worth. I hope they did. I mean, it looked like it. Like I said, as soon you had two crowds, some that would go out front and some that would go to the actual vendor village. I only went to vendor village 3 times, and each time I went, it seemed like there was a good flow. I didn't go the last day, which is the last day is typically when they they do like the half off sales or 35% off, so that way they can get rid of some of their stock. But I can only imagine that it was probably pretty packed there. But I just didn't want to deal with that crowd of trying to fight to get the vendor village or getting scanned in. And like I said, I had to go through with everyone else. But like I said, I thought they did a good job of what they have and what they did. Again, closing down the street, brilliant idea. Kind of make it, kind of almost gave it like that festival carnival feel that you had at Madison. Just not that big giant parking lot that they had in Madison. But I give that a B. I mean, if I had to put a grade on it in terms of that type of that aspect of it.
Let's check off a couple of these comments here real quick. First of all, what's up, HCR CBD? I got the Project Fitness shirt on today. Thank you guys for always supporting us.
Yeah. The Albany River Rats. I believe they're indoor football team. I think they have or is the River Rats their indoor lacrosse team? It's a professional indoor lacrosse team. Also, Siena. It's a university there in the Northeast. I believe that's their home arena. And if you know who Siena is, they're really known. Pretty well. They're a pretty good basketball school. They've made the NCAA tournament quite a number of times. So. That's where that arena is, and they've had numerous concerts there as well.
Yes, Kate and I are born on the same day, along with Roger Federer and Dustin Hoffman. I think those are probably the two most other famous August 8th birthdays that'll come up on Friday. So if you want to wish Kate a happy birthday, come and listen to her show tomorrow.
Yeah.
Then, how was the first Form Games? We did an entire show on that, but one of the things Patrick was just talking about that they also did well there was manage the food situation. And I see your other comment here about when are you guys going to talk about the games? We are talking about the games. There's tons of different aspects and elements of it that make or break the experience for the different people who especially go there on site. And we do see the questions about the live stream as well. But managing the food situation at competitions like this is really challenging, especially when you use arenas that have certain parameters about external food being allowed and how you navigate that, because there are often people who obviously want to be involved from a food vendor perspective. And Asian Flavor Punch is a good example of someone who used to go to these competitions and see a lot of unhealthy options more or less available and wanted to provide an easily accessible and mass-produced healthier option of food available for people who generally eat healthy in their life more often than not and are going to these competitions. So we think that those things are important aspects of putting on a successful competition, and we will absolutely talk about the athletes and some of the performances as well. Dan Guerrero, your son's birthday, excellent. And John Woolley's birthday. Oh, amazing. Okay, so let's we can talk about the live stream. I see tons of people asking about it. I didn't watch the entirety of the competition. I did watch some of the competition from each day. Obviously, Patrick was on site, so it's a different perspective for him. And I intentionally scheduled other things for myself this weekend. Also, the Disc Golf World Championship was going on, so I was watching that. And my brother was in town, and we played in a disc golf tournament. So lots of different things juggling on the weekend, which I wanted to do to keep myself occupied for obvious reasons. I knew it was going to be a challenging and emotional week for me, regardless, and it still is. But I also obviously have tremendous respect for people who run competitions, people who organize and do broadcasts and live stream, and of course the athletes. And I thought from the perspective that I have, I think it was obvious that there were certain obvious reasons. The impact of last year's games, the loss of a friend of mine, and that it's coming up on 1 year anniversary of that. I think that the live stream was overall very good. I mean, obviously Chase and Adrian and Mike have a ton of experience doing that. Joel and Bella and Bethany jumping in the way that they did. I thought Bethany did a pretty good job for the first time from the stuff that I heard from her. I'll give you guys an example of good and bad of the way that I digest these live streams. So something that I thought was really great, it was actually one of the best shots that I've ever seen from a CrossFit Games in live action, was during the second half of the burpee box jump workout. So I think it was throttle hammer down. I can't remember which one was first, but either way, the second half of it, it was a women's final heat. Lucy was moving forward and she was in the lead. Tia was basically 3 reps behind her, 1 box behind, and all of the women were on the boxes at some point. And they went to basically what was usually called camera 1. It's the one shot, it's the wide shot, and you could actually see the leader in focus, but you could also see all the other women and where they were jockeying for position, moving up the floor on those boxes. One thing I definitely wanted to take a second to acknowledge today is, despite any of the things that I've ever said in the past, I've never suggested that Dave isn't great at the things that he's great at. And, he knows how to write workouts that are effective for the athletes and digestible for the fans on site and at home. And that was a good example of him kind of doing something new and innovative that told a beautiful story throughout those back-to-back workouts. And the director, Mike, had a great shot there at the end where you could see all the athletes at once. It's a very challenging sport to do that in, because all the workouts are always different, the progression and the athletes separate during the workouts. But I thought that was an example of a great kind of cinematic shot that got the leader with the story of the entire heat at the same time. On the flip side of that, I would go to the men's final heat of the final event, which, I mean, just in a nutshell was like, yes, I would agree with everyone else that it was one of the most exciting and compelling races in the history of the sport. But if you look at the workout on paper and also the totality of what's going on the floor, that was a 3-round workout where the rounds were getting progressively longer, and there was a nice long march to the finish. So there's plenty of storytelling opportunity. Patrick's already said that the it was one of the longer workouts. So for those 6 athletes, there's plenty of opportunity to zoom in on them as the workout goes on. And obviously you want to set it up like that, but to keep in context, the totality of what's happening. And I think that prior to the competition, Patrick and I talked about there being 8 men who were clearly at the top of the sport. And I feel remiss for not including Jay Crouch in that, which I think Patrick will have something to say about, but Jay clearly is, if you look at his results. So you have these 9 guys that are the kind of predictable and incredible top 9 in the sport. And then the last guy that earned a spot in the final heat for the final workout was Tudor Magda. And I don't know how much of Tudor's story over the last 12 months is necessarily known publicly, but he had some physical problems that he had to address with an operation. He had a change in coach. He didn't know if he'd compete at all this year, all this stuff. And he made it into that final heat. And the first round, which was 3 rope climbs, and then go to the bar, they zoomed in on the middle lanes, which is expected by the end of the workout. But at the first part of the workout, I love keeping it wide and showing all 10 of the best athletes in the world climbing the rope. First of all, it just looks incredible. And second of all, by the time they did go wide, 3 guys on the left side and 2 guys on the outside were already at the barbell, and the middle guys were behind. So they missed kind of an opportunity, I thought, to showcase what was a great accomplishment for Tudor in a year that was very uncertain to him. For anyone from Washington State area where he's from that might have not been able to make the trip across the country to watch. And I mean, it's expected and obvious that the focus is going to narrow in on those top athletes, the podium contenders, the games champion contenders, as the workout progresses. But just having the ability to see what the workout is, realize that you can stay wide on that first shot, get this beautiful shot anyway, give some attention to some of the other guys, and then draw it in from there. Like that, those are the types of things that I'm looking at when I watch live streams that I don't necessarily know how many other people are thinking about or in what depth they're thinking about them, because most people don't spend their life traveling around and trying to come up with the best ways to storytell different workouts at different competition venues with different floor layouts week after week for years on end.
Yeah. I wasn't able to watch too much of the broadcast, obviously. But what I did watch, and then what I heard, I think Hiller did a good job of like spotlighting some of the, errors. We do know that it was streamlined from past broadcasts. Hamilton Rhodes did do the broadcast again, which is great because no one knows and shoots the sport better. Well, besides us, right? But no, but Charlie and his team, it was a scaled back version of it. I think, I was talking to some people with CrossFit, they had to scale it back due to some money and size and stuff like that, but they did do some cool things. Like I said, the counters on the bikes, the rep counters, they did have to alter where they had the scoring team where they were located at. I mean, but I think overall, from what I heard from the broadcast is like one, Chase and Adrian did a great job. Both teams did good. I mean, I heard really good things about Bethany, especially her time broadcasting and doing teams of all things. I heard that she was really spot on with the analysis for that, which is good. Of course, it really does help to have someone like Joel. And, we talk about Joel Cadet all the time. That guy is so underrated as a play-by-play announcer. Especially, I marvel at the research that he does. And you know better than anyone. Like, that's one of the things you've done for so long is provide all these facts and research. But whenever you work for Joel, he's coming to that event prepared. And not to say that other guys aren't, but he's coming in, he's not showing up the day of, or, he's doing he's reaching out to athletes weeks in advance, finding out, especially for teams. He'll know what the team rosters are and stuff like that heading on. But no, it's like, I just heard really good things about the broadcast. I would say it's a lot easier to broadcast when you have all the events indoors minus one. And even the event they did in outdoor, I thought they did a cool job. They had an e-bike, and they put a GoPro on the e-bike. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh man, what was this filmed through? Like a fucking potato?" No, it was just a cool thing. I mean, that's stuff that we've talked about, like how we can innovate some things, and maybe putting a GoPro on the back of a gator, for that lead pack. But they had multiple e-bikes out there. They had one e-bike for the men, and once they split off, once there was a separation with the women, they deployed another e-bike to kind of keep the women's race. And they did a good job with the drone. They had cameras set up at critical spots to turn around. I just thought they did a good job of innovating that as well. But yeah, it's a lot easier to broadcast something indoors. And and a lot cheaper, obviously too. So.
Let me ask you about this comment from CJ. She had a friend, I guess, that went to the games for the first time who said it was just a lot of time to spend inside, presumably for someone who wants to watch all of the action.
Yeah, I had a conversation with some people about this too. I mean, I'm going to be quite frank, and I've heard other people say about this. Yes, it was the games, but the programming didn't feel like games programming. It didn't feel like the games from a visual aspect, because when I think of the games, I think of those epic moments out on the soccer field or in the tennis stadium, or at North Park, where you had these amazing freaking things. Like, one of my favorite all-time events is Chaos. One of my favorite Strongman's Revenge. Those type of things where when you had the snail, when you had the sprint couplets and stuff like that. Those are all cool things to watch visually, because they're outdoors. And the cool thing about North Park was that it was outdoors, and you look around, those stands are packed, and it gave those people that paid a general admission ticket an opportunity to watch half the events happen outside. It was that festival, people with their shirts off, flexing muscles, but when you throw all the events indoor like that, it just kind of reminded me of like a semifinal, like a really, really well run semifinal. A lot of people told me, athletes said it was like, it reminded them, it was no different than the French Throwdown, and those are obviously European athletes, or that's what they had to compare the games to. Like, especially those games rookies, like Sirius said the same thing. She's like, it just reminded me of the French Throwdown. It's like, but with more people in the stands. Now, granted, the French Throwdown, you were there. I think it was a smaller venue as well, whereas MVP Arena is pretty big. But I think that's the element that was missing at this games, was that outdoor event, that that park vibe, where every year Dave's going to call up Bill or Katie, like, hey, can you do this? Can you make this? And Bill's like, all right, we're going in there with the welders, and we're going to create something cool and throw it out there, and sell more of them online or whatever. That aspect was missing, and that, I think that's what separates the games from semifinals. And when it comes to programming, is that you program for that, and that's what athletes do.
And I think that this conversation kind of puts into perspective an overarching, a theme that I've seen on the back end of the games. I mean, CrossFit mentions here, North Park was the strangest money pit. And obviously the impact of building an arena, building an obstacle course, creating all these unique implements like you talked about with the help of Bill and Katie and Rogue team and whatever, are memorable for athletes, memorable for fans, and that we can relive those through the broadcast, of course. But it costs a lot of money. And everybody understands this year that it was critical for Dave and the team and Don and whoever else is involved in that to manage the finances. And that shows throughout the totality of the season, from the affiliates hosting the Open, through the version of the qualifying process that we had, through, you talked about some of the stripped back stuff on the broadcast, and obviously with the programming. I think that the venue came at a very reasonable to no cost type of situation for them, and you need to manage those things. I think that given the circumstances, we could probably say two things. That I would say, unlike last year, Dave managed this financial situation very well, and he created workouts that were effective. Definitely, you could see the carnage on the finish line over and over again, and also affordable. But they still looked great. Some of the floor layouts that they had were really nice. Storytelling was excellent. The games were epic. That's what we're talking about. So, but on the flip side of that, this narrative that the games are so back type of thing is like, not quite. And I think that that's what we're talking about. There's things that we have come to expect over the years at the games that, for all the reasons we just talked about, we knew they weren't going to be able to do that year, which is okay. But it's also a little bit, I would say, short-sighted to say that they've, returned to the glory days, so to speak. Was it a great games in terms of the expression of fitness and athletes and floor presentation? I think yes. Was it the games of old? I don't think so. But I don't think that that's an issue. I think that is very much expected. But we don't have to pretend that it was, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, this whole narrative, like the games are back, we're back, blah, blah, blah. How can you make that assumption when that's something you should save for next year, because this is the dip. This is the dip. Last year, despite the tragedy, it was still sold out. It still happened. It still had great broadcast numbers. So this year is the complete opposite. I mean, good broadcast numbers, but the attendance wasn't there. The fans weren't there. The ones that were there had a great time. They were loud. They were vocal to the community. So to say we're back, I think this is if for you to say we're back, that needs to be said. That needs to be made next year at the games, if the attendance rises and the community comes back and all that stuff. This is a great start to comeback, but or this new era or whatever you want to call it. But to say we're back, I just think that's a little premature right now. Because we haven't. What if whoever buys CrossFit decides like we're going to scale back even more? Or yes, it's great to be hopeful, and I don't want to. I'm very hopeful. After seeing what they did this year, I'm very hopeful. But I'm not going to sit there and say CrossFit's bad, because I don't think CrossFit still has a lot more they can do and will do. But that's all going to be decided on whoever buys CrossFit, if it even happens. I mean, we're all assuming that CrossFit's going to be sold, but yet we've been saying that for 6 months now. Who knows? CrossFit, from what I heard, there's an offer on the table, and they're just like they're slow playing it, because in which they rightfully should, because you don't want to sell something after your premier event. You want to, or before, you want to sell it afterwards, because you're hoping the value will be higher afterwards, and you can raise the cost of that. I don't know. But to say we're back, I'm going to reserve judgment for that for next year, or if something changes along the season, because again, we have no idea what the game season looks like next year. We do have an open date, but we have no idea what the format's going to be back. I mean, we can't say we're back until, because this is the starting point. This is the starting point of that journey back.
I think this is actually kind of an important comment. Guillaume, our friend, Mr. Tell, it was the games that consolidated. There's a community that support CrossFit, that support the games, and Dave Castro. I don't think that was ever called into doubt. What I think has been called into doubt is that there is also a part of the community that no longer supports him, and maybe Don Fall as well, after last year and the way that was handled. And I think that one of the things that I've heard from the community that wasn't there, which was the international community, which is a huge part of our community, is that it felt more US centric than ever. In fact, the entire season has. And it's one of the criticisms that becomes more and more, you get exposure to it when you actually take time to go to those communities and talk to those people and spend time with them. And they want to love it, but there's things that are going in a direction that's difficult for them to support. And this is where, I'm curious to see how this evolves, because obviously there's people that are supportive of CrossFit, the games, and Dave Castro, but there's a lot of people that are supportive of one or two of those things, but not all three of those things. And CrossFit, I think, is aware of that. I think there's people that they understand. There's people that are all about the affiliates, and they don't really care at all about the games. And there's also people that love the games, but they think Dave Castro is a criminal, and they don't want to see him involved in any way, and they're not going to put their money towards anything that he's doing. Like, that is a reality that exists, maybe a little bit in the US, but especially in some of the international communities that they don't want to acknowledge, but they have to factor in. And I think that it's not a bad thing to recognize that, because this is a movement, and Dave was a big part of starting this movement that has made a big impact globally. But it's not at this point, either they're not able to, or they don't want to consider that portion of the community in the way that they're rolling out. What I would agree is impressive media in general. You got to unmute yourself, Patrick.
Yeah, the media, you brought up the media. I thought they did a great job, media. I want to give a shout out to Jenna, the marketing director. I thought what they did during the event and building off of that and leading into, I thought she did a good job of marketing it and bringing the media. I thought what they did in terms of media, she did a great job. They did a great job with the highlight package at the end. They did a good job with the Brooke Wells piece. The daily recaps. I thought they did a good job. So, what we're seeing is like, I think under Jenna's, I think she's in charge of media right now, but I think under her direction, you're seeing that media come back where it's, me and you both know it kind of was like, it didn't really have an identity ever since 2019. So, I mean, in that aspect, that's going to be huge in this resurgence of CrossFit. The mission, bring, and also getting media involved. I mean, yes, we weren't there on a media pass, but I look forward to see what Sevon puts out and what it does. I mean, hopefully it's good stuff. And they'll lean, and CrossFit will lean into that. And what other people are doing. There's a lot of good things coming out right now. And I think.
Well, and this is a nice comment from Olivia. I didn't really know this. I guess I didn't watch close enough to pick up on this, but this is something that people have been asking for a long time, is to use the games as the biggest marketing tool that you have to drive people to the affiliate. So you and I have spoken many times about how we think inherently competition does that for people who choose to compete because of the lifestyle choices they make. But this is an opportunity for people who don't. I mean, you can't deny it. If you look at the viewership, more people are watching this competition than any other competition during the year, which means that you have more opportunities to introduce people to a concept that's digestible for them in their own life, even though they're watching something that's superhuman for them to imagine doing themselves.
Yeah, I mean, on average, 1.2 million views for each day of competition. I have to look back, and I mean that was, well, day 1, 1.4, day 2, 1.2, day 3, 1.2. I have to look at the numbers from last year, but obviously with the tragedy and stuff like that, or previous years. I mean, yeah, if that's amazing. That's great, and I think
stay tuned, CrossFit. Tune in a couple of weeks, and you'll be rewinding all you want.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just like, Rogue does a good job of that. Like when they do their broadcasts, it's Rogue commercials. It's about Rogue. It's what they're selling. CrossFit as a brand, as a methodology, that's what they need to sell. So I just thought it was really cool. And CrossFit said, don't forget Dad. I'm really interested. I know with like most streaming services, they don't put out their numbers, but I'm interested to see how many people actually watched it on Dad. I mean, I would imagine most people elected to go on YouTube because, one, it's easier to consume, but I know like Dazn or Dazn, I forgot what it's called, but it's, I don't want to log in, sign in, give all this stuff so I can watch something when I can watch it easily on YouTube without signing in and do that stuff. So I just think it gives another platform, especially internationally, for people that don't have YouTube or have a VPN. The Zone. Thank you, Sugan.
Let's get into a little bit of the kind of the competition side. One of the things that you and I had spoken about, I don't know if we talked about it on air or not, but we talked about it beforehand, was totality of the athletes who went to Proven and spent 4 to 6 weeks there in this very focused, a lot of experienced coaches, some very experienced athletes with some new athletes, and that team would end up performing at the games. We've seen in the past where athletes have done this sort of pre-games training camp and they've overtrained and then it hasn't gone well. But from my perspective, sitting back here, and I'm sure you're going to echo this, but maybe you can key in on a few of the athletes. I thought this was a remarkably impressive performance by the Proven camp overall.
Yeah, I mean, you can't deny that. I mean, right now, looking, it seems like every year we play that like camp game, like which camp showed up and showed out. Proven and Brute. I had a chance to talk to Coach L and Torres before, and they're really leaning on a men's podium of Brute athletes. But Proven, I mean, you look at that women's field. I remember at one point I was looking at that final heat. There was 4 out of the 10 women were Proven athletes. You got Olivia Kirsten, Maddie Sturt, Lucy McGonigal, and then of course Tia. I mean, it's like, and what they did on the men's side with Ricky and Jay. I mean, just what they definitely show that that they've kind of separated themselves from the pack. And I forgot who I was talking to. It's like Proven is in a position right now. For the longest time, Mayhem was kind of like, if you wanted to be camp, Mayhem was the model, but not everyone could do that. That Mayhem model where you have an affiliate, you have this great huge location. Proven is the closest to that model, but they've done it in a different way in terms of they've done it in a city, a small city that's easy to get to. They've done it with a smaller gym. They've made it so that way. They've gone international like Mayhem, but how they've done it is so impressive. Like the business acumen that someone like Nick Johnson brings. The sponsorships, how they're involved in their community. They have freaking Paper Street Coffee. They're a coffee business inside there. I mean, yes, Mayhem has their Buffalo, their own coffee, but still, it's just like you've been there. I think Proven is kind of shown that there's a way to do it where you don't have to like break the bank, because
This is an interesting comment to me, because if you read between the lines here, I think he's suggesting that they would maybe be tipped off on some of the workouts, but I don't really think that it matters that much, and I think it takes away from what the athletes that went out there, and I would say exceeded the majority of people's expectations for them, actually achieved this weekend. And I did want to give you a chance to talk about a couple of them. In particular, for me, some of the people have mentioned them. I thought this was a really important weekend for Ricky and an exceptional weekend for Olivia. And I was curious of your perspective on those two.
Yeah, we've talked to Ricky, and me and you've talked about Ricky too, how this is a make or break year. Like that window's closing very fast for Ricky. And I think he, I have my own opinions on why he changed and went to underdogs to Proven, but what he's showing right now is that it maybe was the best move for him because, he finished second. Now, would he have finished second with under Kotler? I don't know, but maybe he felt like, and most time when an athlete leaves a camp for another camp, it's usually because they felt like they peaked with that coach or that program. So Ricky wanted to change things up. So that's why he did that. And plus the opportunity to train with the best and an opportunity to train with a good friend of his like Jay. Like you hardly ever see it. I mean, you see it with the Brute people, but him and Jay have become really good friends and they've become really good training partners. And they're very, very, they're very, I don't think there's any jealousy there. Maybe there is, but it doesn't show.
If it's there, it seems like it's healthy somehow.
It's healthy. Yes, they have a healthy environment, just like just like the guys from Brute. But again, those Brute guys aren't training together all the time. Jay and Ricky are, for most part, training together. I mean, they train for almost 2 months before the season. They're training this month for WFP. I mean, think about it, that's almost 3-4 months that they're training against each other, and it's leveling them up. And so I think Ricky, him finishing second, I know he had some, and if you listen to Caitlin, she didn't really like that he kind of put the blame on the pegboard, but also, someone I've read somewhere, like if he would have hit his last squat, he would have won. He would have got the points necessary to win the thing. So it's like you can't really, it's the inches and small things. It's easy to be the armchair quarterback or hindsight's 2020 looking back. But I thought him finishing second, especially considering most people didn't have him finishing second or even being that close to winning. I mean, he was only a few points behind Jason, and Jason, in my mind, got rid of the whole flopper nickname by just simply doing that. I mean, it was looking scary there when he missed that last snatch on running Isabel, but he made it interesting. He made it for a compelling race. As for Olivia, I mean, I've known Olivia since she was a teen athlete. When I saw her compete in person at the pit throwdown as a 14-year-old back during COVID in 2021 or 2020 actually. And to see her progress as an athlete and the level of maturity, she does a good job of balancing what she does at Proven versus what she does when she's at Hepner. Hepner is, her coach, but she follows the programming, and and Hepner is her, was her training partner. Now it's Chris Ibarra, But I think we got to see her at Monster Games, and I talked to her, and I was like, "You look great." She goes, "Thanks." I think I've lost a lot of that baby fat, and she didn't get sucked up by the freshman 15. Instead, she leaned up, and she didn't gain any weight. She didn't lose her muscle mass. She might have lost a little bit. She thinks she might have lost a little bit of strength, but that was a sacrifice she had to do to be a games athlete, because we know the games is it's about running and being in that aerobic capacity, shape. And she did that, and she showed that in all those workouts. And I think it says a lot about her training partner, Chris Ibarra. We know Chris Ibarra is an aerobic capacity. I mean, he is basically Hebner 2.0, and that's her training partner. And we saw that at Monster Games. Like they were sitting there doing zone 2 that Saturday on those assault bikes, and not assault bikes, but the Concept 2. So I think she's figured it out in terms of her diet, what she has to do to be a perennial podium contender. I think the trajectory for her is up. I mean, and she's someone to keep an eye on. She's figured it out. She's going back to school. She's going to school locally. She's going to KU. She spent her freshman year down in Arkansas, but she's going to be 30 minutes away from university at Kansas. And she also there's a lot of remote classes she's taking, so she's taking this seriously.
I think a general sentiment that I've also heard expressed on multiple platforms is that you had two pretty different feelings when it came to the quality or the excitement or the drama or how close the races were between the men's field and the women's field. And you and I have talked about the fact that the top men, they're competing everywhere this year. They're all doing the game season. They're all doing WFP. They'll probably all do Rogue. If they got an invite to Tier So, they're doing it. Like, the men are just showing up. They've been able to put all that other stuff aside. They want to compete. On the women's side, that's not the case. And we talked about it. Pregnancies, injuries, life circumstances, personal choices based on whatever to not participate in one or the other, or some things like that. But from the perspective of being on site there, was there a noticeable difference between the men's final heat and everything else that happened this weekend?
Yes. I mean, everyone keeps on saying it. You said it prior when you talked about your top 100. That 8 that we called it, that is now, we'll talk about now, that's probably 9 now. I mean, there's that, yes, there are greater there. I mean, at no time, no era do you have 9 athletes that any of those 9 could have been a games champion.
I'll say any of them could have podiumed. I don't know if they all could have won.
I don't know. I think Jay Crouch is. I think he's on the come up, and he finished what? I mean, who finished 9th?
Roman, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think Roman could win a game. I mean, we all know when it comes out.
I haven't asked anyone this. Do you have any idea what happened to him on running Isabel?
I don't. I just think maybe they're
watched the workout back, and I was like, what? Like, he shouldn't be finishing 28th in a field on a workout like this. Something must have happened. Yeah,
maybe, I don't know. I mean, he looked fine in the final event. I think he finished top 10 in that event.
Yeah, good finish. That finish didn't make sense to me on paper.
Yeah.
And like I said, I haven't asked anyone about it yet. I was just curious.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's something we can ask Roman.
While we're in the top 10 on both, and we've already talked about proven, get some great comments here from 2 people who are absolutely deserving of it. Jay Crouch and Maddie Sturt, both of them with their best finishes yet and continuing to do so. Anything that you saw from them that you want to share?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of sharing, I think it was Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. I spent the whole day, basically most of the morning, the whole morning and part of the afternoon with Hiller, and just kind of seeing how he works, and me and him went out to lunch and stuff like that. It was really cool. But one of the questions he asked me is like, okay, what's the podium look like? And I told him, like, Jay Crouch is going to podium. I'm really impressed by Jay Crouch. I'm like, to me, Jay Crouch is Justin Medeiros 2.0. he's not going to win many events, but he's going to be consistent across the board. And it looked like that the first couple of days, day 1 and day 2. And I think Jay, I don't know what happened there towards the end of the competition, because finished, well, I mean, 6th to 7th and 7th, but right there, that 14th, 16th, and 12th, that kind of took him out of it. But starting off with a 5th, a 3rd, a 5th, and a 1st, I was, he's impressed me. He's leveling it up, and I think it has to all totally do with Proven and Ricky, and the same with Maddie. Maddie's, I mean, she's like the, I mean, it's great that they're a couple, they're partners, but she's leveled up because she's training with Tia, alongside Tia, alongside even someone like Sydney Wells or Kyra. I mean, she's seeing that, because before she wasn't getting that when she was at Tori, and it was just her and Jay. But now she doesn't have to worry about Jay. She's competing against women that she has to compete with. So I was really impressed by them. I think both of them, they're both still young. I mean, what Jay is 25, 20.
Jay's 26, Maddie's 28.
Yeah, but and I mean, Maddie's a little bit older, but I think she's still young.
I think the thing that I really liked from Maddie actually was her post after the competition, where she said, this is the best I've ever done, but when I was higher on the leaderboard late in the weekend, to finish here doesn't feel good. Back to work. Like that's how, me paraphrasing it. And you have to consider and keep in mind the the totality of her career. Made it 4 years in a row, then really hit a fall off as the qualifying process changed and became more difficult in her region. But since she's made it back, she's really been climbing up the ranks. And I think that there's an element, I saw a comment in here like this, they move like mini Tias. I think it's maybe more of a mindset thing, that like this is her best performance. And 2 days later, she's willing to tell the world, I'm not satisfied with that. I still think I can do better.
Yeah, that's that Tia mentality, which is like the Mamba mentality for CrossFit, that Tia / Fraser mentality. It's like, I'm not satisfied. I want more, yeah, it was just really cool. Yeah, someone mentioned something about Austin Hatfield flopping. This can actually go into, we can also talk about this, because I know people want to talk about the pegboard, but my mind, I sent this message to Kate. I'm like, I think Austin Hatfield's going to win the games. And that was right before the last event. And the reason why, I think what happened is too little too late. And he was just, he finished 6th on that. I think 6th on that last event, or no, I forgot.
Final. He was 10th on the final.
Yeah. And I think he just, that first just took a lot out of him, but for him to put himself in that position, it was very Laura Horvath, almost Rich Froning-esque, on Sundays. But yeah, you look at that 28th, and that there's no reason Austin Hatfield gets a 28th on that workout, and that's a workout I actually had him winning, or as a favorite, and for him to finish, almost dead last. That's just.
Well, I want to talk about this, and I do want to acknowledge that my perspective is limited, because obviously I wasn't there. I have no idea of the conversations in the back and what was going on and what the factors were in play. But there's a couple of things that I have a lot of experience with based on working at a lot of competitions around the world, and one of them is that the men's field and the women's field are two different competitions. And if you notice during one of, let's say the women are going first, that the women are doing something and there's an element of the workout that you've designed that's preventing the athletes from showcasing their fitness, it is not appropriate to change something after the first heat. If there was a scenario that heat 1 had to deal with, all the rest of the heats in that division have to deal with it. But you can certainly make a decision to change something for the upcoming division that's going to increase the quality of what you're trying to do, which is allow the athletes to showcase fitness. And it seems to me from everyone that I talked to that the pegboards were wet. This is not the first time that that's happened. And there were people on site in close proximity to the competition floor. In fact, our friend here, which we'll talk about this later on. Oh, no, wait, that's not it. That's RJ Howell. Oh, that's JR's brother. I've been at a competition at JR's gym in which the pegboards were wet, and he had to deal with that circumstance on the concrete walls in the back of his gym. But either way, you could call an audible and you could send the medical, for example, like barbells or pull-up bars, and have them wipe down all the lanes in the same way for all of the men's heats, with the intent of doing what the competition is designed to do, which is showcase the athletes executing fitness, not managing inconsistent variables when you know they exist. To me, the worst part about all of this, and again, I didn't watch the whole thing, I only saw what Hiller clipped and someone sent to me, is that Kate, maybe not, and this is why, is what Dave had to say about it, which was basically that he wasn't willing to take ownership at all for the fact that the pegboards, or even to acknowledge, from what I can tell, that they were slippery. What he wanted to say is that the athletes didn't manage it well. They went up too early, and this goes all the way back, to interview after interview, year after year, that the guy is unwilling to admit publicly that they make mistakes, which is obviously ridiculous. We all make mistakes, and I think that there's a percentage of the people that are skeptical to dismissive of Dave because of this, and that he's going to just continue to toe this line. We didn't do anything wrong. Or at least we're not going to acknowledge that publicly, when it seems from the outside world and from the inside world, because I have spoken to a few athletes and coaches who were involved in this situation, that there were clear and noticeable and known inconsistencies happening in that event that did dictate the outcome of the competition. And the outcome of the competition is a big deal. So yeah, this is right. He's a company man. So great. It's not a big deal. It never was an issue before. I mean, this is like, we've seen these examples year after year, and I don't want to talk about it, too much, but it's like, it definitely is a big deal. If you speak to some of the athletes, Mike, it absolutely affected the performance. The playing field was not uniform in terms of the plexiglass, but also the variables of how they were allowed to deal with the plexiglass. Some athletes were able to wipe it off with towels, others were not. Anyway, so yeah, I think that I don't have anything else to say about it, but what I will say is Austin Hatfield, I don't think it was a flop at all. He's amongst the best guys in the world. He's not clearly the best one in the world. I don't think there is a clear best in the world right now. Jason won this competition. He earned the title. He'll hold on to it for a year, but there's plenty of other opportunities. I think we'll get a different champion at Rogue. I think we'll get a different champion at WFP. And I think that we're going to continue to have this really dynamic parity on the men's field, which brings me to RJ's comment that I want to ask you about, PC. I mean, if we're just being honest, you back up 18 years, and I tell you that over the next 2 years, Dallin Pepper, James Sprague, and Jason Hopper, 2 of these 3 guys are going to win the CrossFit Games over the next 2 years. Everybody is definitely saying, okay, well, Dallin's going to get one of them, and we'll see between Jason and James. And here we are, and that hasn't happened. And I saw the picture with the 3 of them and someone else at the finish line or something like that, and it looked to me like Dallin was forcing a smile. And now you see the post that Mr. Howell here is referring to. What are your expectations for Dallin over the next several months? Because we have Mesa coming up. He'll be in SoCal, Rogue, and the WFP final. He's got a lot of opportunity to compete against these guys. And I just have to believe, knowing him as well as I do, that he's not happy about this result.
Sorry, I'll mute myself. I don't think he cares about WFP or Wodapalooza or Rogue. I think now he wants games. So, I think what you're going to see is, you're going to probably see him take a podium or 5th, but I don't think he's going to go out to try to win those. I think all his focus is he's going to use those events as platforms for him to propel himself to being the fittest person in 2026. Because we've seen it with Adler. We've seen it with with Austin. I mean, those guys won those events, but look where they finished this year. It's not about those. He wants to be a games champion. He wants to be, Jason has it, Justin has one, James has one. Those are the 3 guys. They all have that over Dallin now. So that's all he's going to be focused on. So I think he even mentioned something about it on their channel when I think towards the end on their Boys Interrupted podcast I think someone asked him about hey, it's going to be a busy season. Are you going to do all these events? And all of them were like, yes, yes, yes. And I think Dallin's like, maybe. So I think Dallin, I would not be surprised if Dallin, I think he will do a Rogue. I mean, I think he's already penciled in for SoCal, but I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't do Wodapalooza at all. because that goes right into the right into the open. And I think maybe he won't take maybe he won't. I don't know. He'll change some things. Like him and Torres. Torres is going to be the same way because it's Coach L is Hopper's athlete. Dallin has been with Torres longer than any of the athletes he's had. He's had Dallin the longest. And that's the guy. It's like having two sons, him and James. But that first son, your first son's always going to be your favorite, and whether you admit it or not. And that's what Dallin is. That's the reason why Dallin's in Jacksonville. That's why Dallin has moved everywhere that he's gone. And not to say that he doesn't love James as much, but Dallin is his guy. It's all started with Dallin. So that's where Torres is. I think Torres, he wants that as well. He wants to get that off his plate as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if, he maybe cashes it in a little bit on WFP season, or maybe not. It doesn't matter. That stuff's not going to matter to him. It might for other athletes. So. Yeah.
And I think, this is a very valid and good conversation. There's a lot of comments coming in here, which we appreciate. But kind of people talking about this. Sounds like a lot don't care for Mesa once games happen. I don't know who your CrossFit is talking to that quantifies a lot, or where he's necessarily or she is listening to that. But I saw this post. It was a post that WFP put up. They're putting up all the posts about the athletes and their rankings, and Jason's just happened to fall a couple of days after he wins the games, and it was in line with the post that they all put up, and it didn't acknowledge that he won the games because none of the posts acknowledge anything else other than their ranking in the season for WFP. They did a separate story to congratulate him, but there was some interesting comments in there, and one of them was with regards to the prize money, because it says that his total earnings for the season were $20,000 for WFP through one tour stop, one of three, and that for the games, 280,000 plus or whatever. And they were kind of mocking the WFP for that. But don't forget, there's guaranteed money with WFP. So that 20,000 is going to be supplemented by additional earnings throughout the year. So we don't know what the totality of that's going to look like. And if you look at someone like Dallin, to Kate's comment that he might not do the games next year, he has to, at some point you have to do the realistic financial assessment that Jeff Adler and Caroline Lambre have talked about. Most of the athletes haven't talked too much about it because I don't think it's that necessary to, but they want to do this for a long time, and to do it for a long time, you need to make a living doing it. So if Dallin Pepper were to give up on the WFP next year, it's not just that 1 year. It's potentially, if WFP continues to exist year after year, of a guaranteed salary that can create a financial situation for him potentially to pursue what might be his ultimate goal, which is to win the CrossFit Games. Based on what he said, it more times than anyone ever has, I think, is what he's trying to chase down. But it's also completely understandable that there would be an emotional letdown after the games. That should be the case for everyone who is involved with it. It is an extremely exciting and emotionally draining weekend. But this gets to a bigger picture, which I think is one that I don't have which I don't think everyone is talking about, which is that the structure of the seasons are gonna matter, and there's potentially gonna be some conflict and decisions that have to be made.
And I just want to 24K ain't much. Grant, you do not know how much these athletes make. 24K is a lot. It is for these athletes, because we're talking about some of these athletes only make $1,000, $2,000 off of their sponsorships. Where's the rest of that money coming from, Grant? It's from competitions. So when you can make 24K, for a year, that's an extra $2,000 on top of that. It adds up. So 24K is a lot more than most of these guys' sponsorships are paying. So, and that's only for doing 3 competitions. So it might not be much for you, but I don't think you realize how much these athletes really make. And I'm talking from a guy who manages athletes and know how much they make. I've seen the deals. I've seen the contract. So yeah, 24K is a lot. No athlete's not going to say, no, let's turn down 24K. It's ridiculous. It's a real situation in any sport that's upcoming, is that there's going to be athletes that are piling up that want to pursue this professionally, and then they have to face the reality, which is I have to make money to give myself a chance to do this. And it's not as cheap of a sport to pursue as you might think when you factor in
all of the necessities regarding travel, food, body work, etc. Let's see what Mike says here. I don't blame any athlete for choosing to focus on W because of the guarantee money. I don't want to blame them. I personally don't want the games to guarantee anything. It's not a sport, it's a test. Fair perspective there. And yeah, if you win the games, obviously it's a completely different story. So I think that's important to talk about. But as long as we're on the topic of winning the games, there's two particular athletes. I think we should just talk about all three of the winners here. And let's start with the men since we're already talking there. I mean, you and I have known Jason since majority of people have. I thought actually there was a really cool post from Jen Green. If you don't know who Jen Green is, she runs Compete Scoring and also is the affiliate manager for the United States in general. She's in the Southeast. She does the scoring for JR's competition. She's done it for Taylor. She did it for Mayhem Classic, and she's heavily involved with the affiliate scene. She hosted a small competition in Greenville, South Carolina in 2017 that he was on the podium for, and then put it up with his CrossFit Games winning podium in 2018, which I don't think there's anyone that'll have a better like then and now than that picture to represent Jason. But yeah, I mean, he crashed onto the scene in 2021, huge way, winning a semifinal, getting the accolade from Dave that this guy is in the line of Froning, Fraser, and Vellner. He was the only other athlete that at that point Dave had ever said had a chance to win the CrossFit Games right away. It took him a few years to do it, but I was incredibly happy and elated for Jason after all the conversations I've had with him. Some of them on podcasts back in the day with Sevan and through all these competitions, but from being there in person, watching him, the emotions, interactions with family, with other athletes, etc., give a perspective on how cool of a moment this was for Jason.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, we've known Jason for a while. You know, I remember when we were doing our picks for that, and I remember doing some research. I'm like, who's this guy? You know, he was like the one guy in that field that I really knew no information on. And then like did a simple Google search. I was like, first thing that popped up was this Clemson football bio. I'm like, ooh, I like this already. And then started just doing some more research. I'm like, you know, and then I remember I picked him as one of the guys. I think I had him finishing third that year. And I remember meeting him at Athlete Check in Knoxville, and he goes, hey, you know, him and Grace Ann came over, and his then coach, his coach at the time, which wasn't JR actually, came over, and he's like, you know, thanked me, and they were like, hey, thanks for believing in us. And it was like, hey, man. And that's when I realized how big he actually was. And then it was cool because, I mean, you did a little bit of research on him too, because of, you know, I think you were really high on Taylor Self that year at the Granite Games. And you were talking about like this guy trains with them. They're, you know, they train together. They competed against each other at, you know, these competitions. And I remember talking to the guy who was his coach. He's like, the reason why he does so well is I train him to be smaller than he actually is. So that's why he's so good at the, you know, at ring muscle ups. That's why he's so good at total bars. Like he's a bigger athlete compared to the field. So I trained him to do that. And I think the biggest question we had was, there were handstand push-ups that year, and we're like, but it was a low number. But I loved his moxie. I loved his arrogance. I loved how he was kind of brought that, like, you know, showmanship. And we didn't see much of that, especially at the games, because especially that year. But what we've seen is this evolution of him as not only an athlete but also as a person. You know, we've been fortunate to see him how his relationship with Frazier and O'Keefe and how that's helped him get to the point where he's at now. Yeah, he's no longer there, but he'll be the first one. If he didn't have those 4 years or however many years of HWPO or their mentorship, that he wouldn't be where he's at now, and he'll be the first one to admit that. But again, it's one of those things like, you know, the change to Brute put him on the podium. So, you know, good on him and the people that he's involved with, you know, because that probably was a hard conversation to have with O'Keefe and Frazier that, hey, I think I'm moving on, you know, and for those guys not to show any ill will at all for it, you know, because
one of the most sentimental pictures I saw from the post thing was Jason and Matt O'Keefe talking there on the floor. And it's good. Like, you know, you always want to remember the people along the way that helped you get there before you arrived. And I think that Jason has done that, and he's been able to do that because although, yes, he has that bravado and, you know, I think you got to have that to be a champion. he's still very grounded, and I think he has a good perspective of that the progress that was needed and the people that came along to help him get to this point.
Now, as for Tia, I mean, what I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I know, like, Kate's in a comment, and she's like, kind of, people want parody and stuff like that, but I mean, I'm just constantly in awe of her. I mean, just like, this version of Tia. I mean, it's like, I mean, and she alluded to it numerous times in the interviews, like, how much of a strain it was on her body to get in the game shape coming off of high rocks. And you saw it. I mean, just the she looked like, 2021 Tia, 2022 Tia. And it was amazing.
Not quite 2020 Tia.
Okay. But it was amazing, just like, just the dominance, and like, but the dominance she had. But but the moment that struck me the most was, seeing her on Saturday at that squad event, not wearing a leader's jersey. That's the latest. That's the. I mean,
what did she wear?
She went all black, and I think she did that on purpose. And she was right next to Lucy, and just watching her stalk. Jason kind of did a similar thing.
We've seen this stalking
the back and forth walking. We've seen it before, and that's what she was doing. No other athlete outside of Jason I saw do that. And Jason was kind of in that same mood because he was right next to Jay Crouch. And but yeah, when she does that, I was like, if you're Lucy Campbell, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying she was intimidated by that, but you noticed that. And Lucy knew that wasn't going to be her.
Did you do this research, Barry, or do you want to give credit to someone for tipping you off on that? But she is in fact tied for the oldest games champion. I think probably he learned that from Andrew.
Yeah, but it's great. I mean,
the thing that I know that I didn't notice necessarily about Tia, but that I saw a recurring pattern from the athletes who are in the proven camp that trained with her during the lead up to it, is that they kept in some way or another saying, I've never seen someone work so hard, or she's the hardest worker that I know. And it reminds me that I think is easy to take for granted when there's someone that's so far above the field. And it goes back to I used to be a high school kicking coach for the football team at a high school, where the head coach and athletic director was a former NFL player for the New England Patriots. And he played during Tom Brady's reign there in, I think, 2008 and 2009. And this was a guy who, for some reason, only needed like 2 to 4 hours of sleep a night. I've told Patrick this story before, but he always told me, he's like, dude, I would go to the gym early, but I would never be the first one there. Tom always beat me. And everyone just looks at Tom Brady and they're like, oh, he sees the field well. He doesn't. No, he put in the work. And what I hear echoing throughout the posts from all the athletes who got to see it firsthand, maybe for the first time, someone like Isaac Newman, he's like, hardest worker I've ever seen. And that's the outcome of that is dominance.
And that's what makes her. I think that she's a major reason we kept on saying about proven. She's the leader. She's the undeniable locker room leader of that camp. I mean, not in locker room, but like you hear the coaches there, the ability to kind of to pick her brain and Shane's brain, has made them better coaches. And those better coaches have pass that information, that knowledge on to the athletes that they train, whether it be Olivia, whether it be Chris Ibarra, whether it be, Maddie or, Jay or whatever. I mean, the list goes on and on. Gracie Walton's another example. I mean, it's just like, it's just, I'm in awe of that. But that did remind me of 2019 also, when Matt, during that clean event, he was pissed that he didn't have that leader's jersey on Saturday night. When Noah was the leader. And that's what it also kind of reminded me of. I mean, obviously there's so many parallels between Tia and Matt. You can go all day about those because they're so alike, and they were so close. They were training partners, but you see so many parallels. And now that Tia's kind of like just going to another stratosphere with her career, and who knows where it goes from here. We do know that she's going to SoCal. She really enjoyed herself at SoCal last year. She's looking forward to winning. SoCal and winning that money, and where she goes after that, I don't know, but I don't know. This is pretty cool. I mean, I'm just what more can you say about her? I mean, we're blessed to witness someone that great in the sport, and I think when she finally steps away, we'll end up missing her.
This is absolutely right, CJ. I'm telling you right now, no matter how early I get to the gym, I'm not winning the games. There's definitely a component of genetics and a bunch of other life circumstances that have to fall in place. But the point in telling a story like that is that she doesn't take anything for granted. So she doesn't think because I've won 7 times before, I can coast to this. She works as hard as she ever has now, and she leads by example in the gym that she's, built with Shane there. And the athletes notice it to the extent that they want to credit her for that. I do want to make sure that we talk about the champions on the team side. Not only do you and I both have an intimate and storied relationship with all of the people at CrossFit Oslo, the Krieger coaches, the athletes there, but I want to start with Tola. He's a close friend of yours. This has been a long time coming. It's potentially the most emotional and powerful picture from the games that I've seen, and I just want to lay the floor for you to talk about what this achievement is like for someone like him.
I mean, you saw that emotion when he crossed the finish line, and I felt emotional for him, and I know his team did too. I mean, and remember, this is a team with Holta on it. That is never, she's never stood atop the podium before either. It meant a lot for her because that's her gym, that's her training methodology that her and Joachim have developed. And then and what it means for Europe, and what it means for like Tola's buying into that. The first thing you look at Tola is like, man, that guy's been around. He's been involved in so many different camps and so many different programs, but you can't, because he has to find that right fit. And Tola's a very interesting person, but he needs to find, everything needs to be the right fit for him, and he found that with Krieger, and it was just great. And you saw that, like, they didn't show it, but they had the ceremony, the athlete ceremony, when you go out with your country's flags. So when Norway came out, I mean, the only Norwegian athletes was the team. There was no individual Norwegian athletes, but Tola came out under the Norwegian flag. Not because he wants to be Norwegian. I think it's part of that team unity. We're a team, and he's the captain of that team, and he took ownership of it. And he's like, I'm not leaving my team. And when I saw that, I'm like, they're gonna win. And it's just a simple gesture like that. I'm like, they're gonna win, because that means he's bought in completely. He didn't march with the U.S., and it's no disrespect to the U.S. It's about his team, and that's what it mattered. And it was his team, and you could see that the whole time. And this is going to mean so much for someone like Victor and Uda moving on. 2 young athletes, and then having Holta there, and it's like, and Seaman, their coach. I mean, for him to buy into the whole Krieger, and
if you follow him on Instagram, you will also see someone captured a very emotional and powerful picture of him watching that finish.
Yeah, and we know Seaman very well. I'm like I said, we have a lot of connection with the Norways and Norway, the Krieger, and it's just I'm just so happy for him. And he deserves it. And it's just it's just really cool. What a team. And what a race too, for him to win it on the final event too, because it wasn't going to come easy, because the Mayhem was tied with them going in that final event. And Angelo has a very similar story. He's never made a podium, and he's chasing. He's been handed the keys to that the Mayhem machine when it comes to team. And I kind of made joke of this, like, Angelo has tied Rich now for the most second places on a Mayhem team. So,
but I do think that the fact that it was so close for so long between 2 of the most storied teams in, there's some others that you could mention in terms of total history, but especially the last 5 years. I thought, and if you are aware of the story of Angelo versus the story of Tola specifically, 2 guys that have been kind of chasing the same thing, facing off against each other in the arena year after year, that I know the teams don't get a ton of love and fanfare, but you and I have talked about regularly how much these athletes, coaches, training programs invest into these teams, how much it means to them, that I actually thought it was after the men's final heat, I thought that this particular battle, Krieger versus Mayhem for the top spot this year was one of the best things of this year's games.
It definitely was. And you got to understand the history between Mayhem and Krieger, the Oslo team. There's a lot of mutual respect there, a lot of love. I mean, you know, it was this Oslo team that kept on finishing second place to Mayhem. There's this Oslo team, you know, that, you know, at one point, you know, I think Rich was trying to get them to become like a Mayhem, like, you know, a Mayhem offshoot. And that's kind of what, you know, I mean, him and the CrossFit Oslo, I mean, Mayhem and Oslo have a really good relationship with each other. So, you know, to see those two at the top of the leaderboard, it just shows you like not only their community, but also like, you know, that's where that trophy needs to go. I mean, between Invictus, you know, you're seeing these names like Invictus, you know, Oslo, Mayhem. These are these team affiliates. These are real affiliates too. I mean, you know, these aren't super teams. The people live there. I mean, Tola moved there. He was engulfed in he was a part of their community. He just didn't go there to train. He went there to be a part of their community, and he was going to all the, you know, the events and stuff like that they did throw. And, you know, same with Mayhem. That's what it's at. But there is one team that we didn't talk about in the top three that I want you to talk to, and that's Camel City CrossFit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I know these athletes quite well. I've covered them all in competitions, team and individual, but I didn't see this coming. And Caroline Klutz is master's age and eligible, just like Kristen Holta. And it's incredible that you know, these women are just continuing to push the boundaries in all these different ways. But Stevie Dellinger's the other woman on that team, tons of team experience in her career. And, you know, we always talk about it. Like, you've got to have the women that can hold the fort down to see it through, or to have these types of finishes at the games. I just wanted to check to make sure. Yeah, she's been in the top 10 before at semifinals, but this was like by far her best performance at the games for Stevie Dellinger. And then on the men's side, Evan Rogers and Lee Sharam, both of whom are individually capable of making semifinals in the East Coast, which I think is the deepest region in the world still. But this year they decided to go team. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it was the perfect programming, getting the momentum going, just the right circumstances. But this was a really cool team to see land on the podium. I didn't see it coming, and I couldn't be happier for them.
They seem really happy. They definitely came in with kind of like we're the underdogs. We have kind of a chip on our shoulder, and it looked like they were having a lot of fun out there. You know, like I said, they know it was a close race. You know, this hasn't been talked to about at all. Is the programming for the teams? I believe Boz did the programming for it, but I really like the programming outside of, again, not having the outdoor type event that you normally see, like the bob, some of the traditional team movements. But I thought they did a good job because they're kind of forced to be inside. I thought they did a good job of it with the workouts. I think a lot of it was a good time to show a lot of the individual strengths of a lot of athletes, as well as how they work as a team. And I thought they did a really good job of showing both aspects of what it takes to be a successful team athlete. And you know, like I said, they had, I think, 3 warm workouts, which I think is great. They had a good gymnastics test. They had the handstand walk. I mean, I thought overall it was really good and really fun. It's just a shame. Again, I was very fortunate because of knowing people in both heats, that I watched I watched every heat of every single event. And you know, it was great. It really was. And it's unfortunate that some of these athletes didn't get some of that love, but it was, you know, at the same time, you know, I'd hope this means that I do like them cutting down to 20 teams, 2 heats of it. So I thought that was really good. You know, there are some other things I want to see done to the team division. Obviously, one would be having video reviews for the qualification to the game. But besides that, I thought overall, you know, good job on the team division. There's some superstars here that you haven't heard of that you probably will be seeing their name as individual athletes in the future. And there's some teams here, some affiliates that you know, Camel City CrossFit being one, might be the next batch of teams to look for. I don't think I think Oslo will always field the team as long as they're affiliated. I think Mayhem will field the team as long as they're affiliated, which they will always be affiliated. But same with Butcher's Lab and Victus. But but great job to the team division. Great job with that and programming it.
Two other small shout outs on the team side. I do want to give an acknowledgement to the team that finished fourth. Butcher's Lab is one of the other storied teams that's constantly sending competitive athletes to European semifinals and CrossFit Games. They take very seriously and proud to have that, and it was very close. 10 points came between them. So even though they didn't make the podium, I thought this was another impeccable performance by the Butcher's Lab crew with some other young athletes on there, especially the guys are pretty young. Oliver and Thomas, so we may see those guys pop up at some point. And then further down the leaderboard, I just want to give credit to the team out of Argentina, Q21. I picked them last. I said their teams usually don't do well there. They beat a quarter of the field, and I thought it was a great way to represent South America in a year that they weren't that well represented overall. But there were two athletes that on the individual side that we didn't talk about that I did want to ask you about. In general, when I took the rankings that I put globally against the performances at the games, there were, I think, 7 outliers, like 10 spots different than what I had projected. And in the positive vein, on the women's side, the biggest one was Miriam von Rohr. And someone, I don't know where I saw it, but talked about how this performance sort of validates the Open. Obviously, she's won it twice. She also qualified through online. She's shown her capacity there, but this is her first real opportunity to test herself. We know it's not the totality of the best women on earth, but it is a very strong field and definitely the strongest she's ever faced. And I was blown away by the 7th place.
I mean, you saw her live last year at French Throwdown. We weren't able to see too much of her at French Throwdown this year because she had that incident where she had the seizure. But I've been able to see her IF3, and then I've been following like her hierarchy career. And I know her coach, Jean, very well. I've had really good conversations with him, and I'm impressed that she finished top 10. I thought she was like a top 15, but then just like, she still does have some holes, some like in her. Again, ring muscle ups were not tested. She'll admit that's an obvious hole, and I think that's criminal that we didn't have ring muscle ups in the games. But that's the only.
Well, and if you look at her worst finishes, rope climb, pegboard, muscle up, I think, or chest to bar, yeah,
upper body pulling. But she that's something that she's gotten better at though. But so for her to kind of manage some of those things, again, 20th. If you would have told her she finished 20th in a workout that had rope climbs, I think she'd take that. Now, granted, if that was legless, that might have been. There's other athletes in the field too that struggle with legless, but that would have been a worse finish for her. But you look at her. She's, I don't think she's going anywhere. But again, I think she's one of those athletes. It's kind of like when you talk about like quarterbacks for a team. Sometimes you have like system quarterbacks. Sometimes you have athletes that are program athletes, and I thought the programming really favored her this year. I don't think we had too many stuff like, again, we didn't have ring muscle subs, not as much. If you program something like alpaca in there, she would probably suffer, struggle in that. But no, she looked really good. She looked like she belonged.
NJSB, thank you for the information and the positive vibes in the chat. The other guy I wanted to ask about on the men's side that really I'm not as surprised about this one, but I do think that he deserves some credit. I haven't consumed everything that's out there, but I thought Callian Souza had a great performance out of Brazil. Usually with the exception of Guy, the Brazilians are towards the bottom of the pack. There's some things that he's really good at that I think showed up here in the programming, maybe that helped him with this finish. But I also think that this is the most complete version of a pretty good athlete that I've seen. And again, just wanted to see if you had a chance to talk to him at all, or if there was anything about Callian that stuck out to you.
No, I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but I was able to talk to his agent. Jared Graybill from E3, and he kind of said the same thing. It's like, he's been working towards this, and we do know that he's done. I mean, he typically does a lot of off-season competitions, particularly there in the Middle East where he lives. And he, and some of those things you expect him to win those, but I don't think so much that he goes there. Yes, he wants to win those competitions because a lot of those competitions has a lot of money involved. But I also think he goes to those too to test himself. It's because there's so many different types of programming out there, and he does have some weaknesses, and we've seen some of those. But a 14th place finish, he looked really comfortable out there. He looked leaner than I've normally seen him. He looked really lean, and maybe that might have been a reason why some of his strength numbers. I mean, he's never going to be the strongest athlete, but maybe that's a reason why his strength numbers were down. Maybe he thought he had to be leaner for the games where where there is a lot of running. But he looked really good when it came to those aerobic capacity.
Running is one of the things that he's best at, and I didn't necessarily know that until Sand Clash 2 opens ago, when I was out there, and he took the 5K run over Luca there, who's also obviously a very good runner. But I was not surprised at all to see him have. I don't know if it ended up being his best finish or not. I didn't check, but I was definitely watching him on that first workout because obviously he's a bigger guy, good rower, and one of the better runners. So, was that his best finish, 6th place? I think it was. Yeah. And he's obviously like most of the guys.
The Albany grip test, he finished 2nd.
Oh, damn. Oh, nice. Oh, but there's some running in that too. Is it correct? Yeah. So, yep. Running shows out there, long arms, good with the deadlift, good at pulling on the rower. So those things track. Harry Lightfoot, I saw Lynn mention him there. I think great shout. I think he was the top performing European this year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and he was in the top heat for a majority of the competition, and mostly looked like he belonged there. I mean, it was very tight there at the end between Tudor, Harry, Colton, I think. But yeah, I mean, Harry Lightfoot is one of those guys. We've talked about it a little bit on the WFP side, which a few athletes, especially some of the top Europeans, Yellow Hoste, BKG, Luca, have fully committed to that season. Harry kind of went the other way, didn't get the invite, went all in on the games. We didn't get to see him at all in the run up to it. He showed up here, and I would say the same thing that I said about Callian. This is the fittest version of Harry Lightfoot that I can remember seeing.
Yeah, and he can only get fitter. I mean, he knows that. He was really disappointed in his performance. I talked to him after the award ceremony. I was like, hey, great job, 11th. He's like, I really wanted that 10th. I really wanted that top 10. And Harry's one of those guys who you give him a goal, because it used to be, because your rankings always had him like, ridiculous. And he even said, he's like, I always wanted to just beat Brian's predictions of me, but now
he did. My rankings actually projected him 12th. So
exactly.
Congrats, Harry.
Again, he's beaten you again. I think he might be the only athlete undefeated against you right now. So when it comes to your rankings, but no, I don't think his ranking. I don't think he has to worry about your rankings anymore, because now he has a different goal, and that's top 10, and he knows he should be there and can be there, and he's only going to get fitter. I mean, he's only 28, has a relatively young competition age. He has a great training partner and coach coach there, and plus the UK scene is blowing up. I mean, we talked about like Jennifer Mears, the Lucy McGonagall's. I mean, I know there's
and Connie Easby, a lot of the women, and he's definitely holding it down for the men.
Yeah, and AOD on the team side. I mean, it's just like I see big things coming in Harry, and if we're, and he should take that personally. I mean, I think it's so funny because Colton Merton's right after him, and him and Colton have kind of similar personality takes, like where they take that shit personal. They're quiet about it, but Harry's like, I keep an eye on Harry. I think his best years are to come, and we talk about those 9 athletes. I think he's, there's another tier right behind him, and he's definitely in that second tier right behind those 9. But he has a lot of upside, and he can easily run into that top 9 if he keeps on progressing like he's been doing so far after 2 years at the games.
Yeah, absolutely. Approaching 2 hours here. Obviously, the intent of the show is to get PC's takes from being on site at his 7th time attending the CrossFit Games. I did, as you guys saw, I watched a little bit, consumed some stuff online, and certainly have a lot of appreciation and admiration for what the athletes did, but also for what, what CrossFit did, regardless of how I feel specifically about Dave's involvement there. There's no lack of understanding for how difficult it is to do an event like this, the circumstances under which they had to do it. And obviously there's a ton of people that contribute to that, staff, volunteers, judges, etc. And I did have a chance to talk to some people who volunteered and judged and worked at the competition. And I'd say there was, kind of a sentiment of, like a little bit, there's some stuff that's still kind of weird hangover from last year, but it was really, really balanced out by, I would think, the more tempered, we're kind of getting back to what this thing was all supposed to be about in the first place, which is the community, the methodology, the lifestyle, and just the willingness to get up every day and do hard things. And that was present throughout the experience as well. So I guess, Patrick, I'll just leave it with you. What did Lynn say, or someone at the start of this? Is the first time you've been the interviewee, so maybe final thoughts, however you want to categorize the overall experience this week.
Like I said, I went in a different role, a different capacity. I was there for 6 days, but it went by so fast. And I think Albany, it's a difficult place to get to. Athletes had some difficulties getting there as well, but they did the best they could with what they had. And the local affiliates, especially Albany CrossFit, they were very accommodating. They really leaned into it. This games was really they try to CrossFit. The game staff really leaned into the community, and they really did. They made efforts to recognize the community as well as the athletes, and that we are a community, and that we need, there are, they acknowledge that they're dealing with some difficulties, whether it be from, the last year's games, but also just other things that have happened within the community. So I think that's a step in the right direction. Like I said, it's not, we're back. I think it's a step in the right direction. We don't know what's going to happen with the sale because, who knows? Someone might buy it, and it might be something we don't want, or the community wants. So, I'll hold my reservation on it, saying we're back, but I'm hopeful. So that's kind of where I'm leaving this games. It's like I'm hopeful for the future, and I'm thankful for the community. I'm really thankful for the CrossFit. I really am. The HQ, like Heather Lawrence, the team Heather Lawrence, really made me feel very welcome. I had a chance to talk with Don Fall. He was very appreciative of us being there, B.Friendly being there. I had an opportunity to talk to Dave. He as well was very accommodating, was very appreciative of us being there. And I think that's a start in the right direction. I think, it comes down to just having the conversations with people. And there was a lot of conversations this weekend with people from around the world and within the community, with people with different points of views, different perspectives. And I think that's a good start. And I think for us to truly say we are back, we need to continue on to have those conversations. So that way we are fully back, because, the community, people may say we're divided or divisive or whatever, but how you combat that is by having open conversations about that. So at the end of the day, let's just keep that going, and we'll see what happens from here. But in the meantime, thanks to everyone in the chat. Really cool. It was really cool to see how engaging you were. Special shout out to HRCBD for supporting us the whole way throughout, and will continue to support us. And I want to send another special shout out to every fan or every person that came up to me during the weekend and said they were happy that I was there, and and that was it. I mean, they're just like, "Hey, PC, it's good to see you here," and that's it. I mean, we didn't need to have a conversation. They just knew, again, that they just knew that we're there, and that this is how we come back. Is just be accepting and just moving on, and enjoy the athletes and the community that we're there to celebrate. So so thanks to everyone that stopped me and had that conversation. And that's all I got to say.
That's it. That's the closing.
That's it. Oh no, it's not. because every person that stopped me was so friendly to me. I mean, I didn't deal with anything. I mean, everyone was friendly to me, so it was great. Um, but that's something we could do every day. So all I'm asking is every day is that you be friendly, our friends.